So today we have Ellie McKay. And this is our very first podcast, and it's going to be a little bit different, Ellie. Why is it going to be a little bit different?
It's going to be very different because it's your first episode, James, and I am honoured to be able to interview you because I am very proud to say I played a very small part in this decision to launch the podcast. Having interviewed you myself, I just thought your story was absolutely incredible in your ability to communicate. And I said to you there and then, you need to do your own podcast.
You did.
And before we start interviewing other people, your audience need to get to know you. They need to understand why you're launching this podcast and a little bit about you. And I'm absolutely delighted to be sitting on this chair with you today for this very first episode. Congratulations, my friend.
By the way, that's a little bit lie. She actually made me do this podcast because she first said to me when I did a podcast, your podcast, on a mission 2.0, she said, you have to do a podcast. And then it was a couple of months later, you came up to Scotland and she was staying at our house and we were having dinner and she's like, James, you need to do a podcast. You can't let yourself down. And I'm like, well, she's guilted me into it now. So
So here we are.
So here we are.
Success or excuses. Okay, fantastic name, fantastic title for a podcast. Absolutely love it. What are the reasons behind it, James?
So, as we discussed on your podcast, I wrote a book last year that was released in August. Oh, and it's there. So,
how convenient.
Success or excuses. You can have success or you can have excuse. You cannot have both. And it was quite, when I writing the book and reading, going back through my own story, I'm just a normal guy. I'm just normal in every sense, except my mindset. And I honestly believe that once we learn that excuses are serving us no purpose, then we can turn anything into a success. Because we can live in a world that's full of excuses and victim thinking mentality, and particularly in business, by the way. Or we can accept that everything that's a challenge can be turned into an opportunity, and that's really what it's all about. I really want it to be about people telling the real, no bullshit story, because on social media, me included, we always talk about success and how amazing things are, but what when they don't go right? What when things go to Pete Tong? What then? What do we do? What was the path we took, and what drove us to take that path? And by the way, and I know you'll know this, every single successful person that I've ever met in life has had a massive, massive dip in their career or their business at some point, almost to the point of failure, if not failing.
Yeah, it's really true. On my own podcast, I've interviewed so many multimillionaires, the majority of which have either been bankrupt, liquidated, or been on the absolute cusp. And the only thing that differentiates the, in quotation marks, successful people quite often is just the perseverance. But as a young lad from Wishaw, did you always have this mindset, or is it something you've had to cultivate over the years?
Oh, definitely something I've cultivated. Now, if you asked people that I went to school with, they'd say cheeky chappy, always edgy, almost entrepreneurial even back then, selling sweets at school and actually selling cigarettes. See, I never smoked, right? But I used to sell cigarettes. So I'd be able to buy cigarettes, then sell them for double the price. So I'd sell singles, right, at school. I know, terrible, but, so I've always had, I would think maybe I didn't know I had something different, because you always compare yourself to others. So the best football player or the fastest runner. Well, I've loved sports. I was good at football. I was a good runner. I was a good boxer. I was good at stuff. I was never great. I was never ever going to be that, because I've never had a passion. And I think that's really important. So growing up, I would say, no, I didn't have that mindset. But I would probably be lying also, because maybe I did. And I just didn't. I wasn't aware of it. I could have, but I wasn't aware of it. But I was always able to fall in a barrel of shit and come out smelling the roses. I don't know if that's mindset or no.
It absolutely is, and it's funny that you should say that, because I was reading a post around somebody referring to the fact that they're always told that they land in shit and they end up smelling of roses. But when that continually happens to someone, and people have said that to me in the last 12 months, having experienced extreme adversity at times and now coming out the other end, not only surviving, but thriving, those exact words have been said to me. But it's a lot of hard work, perseverance, and a mindset. And it's very much around the mindset. It sounds a bit cheesy to say, but it's that victim or victor mindset. I think when we experience hard times, it's choosing to learn from them, and also having a mentality where you think there's no way I've went through all this not to learn, to grow, and to succeed in spite of whatever that challenge might have to be, because we've all had them.
Glad you said the learn there. I think that's the magic. I've always learned, even from a young age, in my mistakes. I mean, I was a toe rag. I was an absolute toe rag.
Can we have a wee bit of detail around this toe rag era?
Toe rag was I was in trouble with the police. I had went to jail for not really nasty things, but I was a naughty boy.
What were you doing to get yourself
fighting?
I
was an amateur boxer, so I used to think I was a ticket. But I was never I've always had a thing about bullies, right? I hate bullying. I hate people who bully. So I've always, when I used to see somebody getting picked on or bullied, I would step in. Even though it was nothing to do with me, I'd end up stepping in, and it got me in a lot of trouble.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was that an eye-opener for you? Was that like a sliding doors moment when you got arrested and then sentenced and you thought, nah, enough is enough? Or at what point did you start to turn things around?
No, every time, as I said, I've always looked at my life and all the mistakes that I've made and thought, is this really what I want to define me? Is this really what I want to be known for? Because I've always thought, I'm a really good guy. I'm caring, I'm loyal, I'm loving. I think I'm a really good guy, and I've always tried to, if I can help somebody, I'll go out my way to help them, right? But don't piss me off. So I'll always help people, right? And I've always thought I was a really good guy. So see, when I got myself in those situations, I'm thinking, I'm a criminal. Like, I'm a criminal. And I used to think, wow, James, you need to sort yourself out. So self-reflection is probably, I've always, my whole life, been able to sit with myself and go, really, James? Really? This is what you want to have happen? Whether it's life or it's business. Really, James? So I've always been able to sit back and reflect.
I think it's really important for anyone who's looking to grow in any area of their life to remove themselves from anything toxic, whether that be a relationship or a particular situation that might
business partner,
etc., that might be kind of holding them back. And it's quite interesting because, taking this back to the podcast, I think this feeds in quite nicely. I know when I started getting into business for the first time in 2018, at that point I had very limited resources. I also had a young baby that was just a few months old, another baby that was 1, and another child under the age of 5. So I wasn't in a position to necessarily get out there and get networking in the way that I might do now. And something that really helped me at that time was listening to podcasts, to expanding my mind, to learning. And it felt like I was also expanding my network, albeit you're not doing it in person with someone in the same room. But to me, that was an absolute game changer. And it's something that everyone can access for free. If you're not able to get out and about, it's that very first step. But as a podcast host, so that was really the start of my podcast journey. But I remember sharing to you when we had the conversation, I said, look, I've got no doubt that your podcast will be an absolute success just because of your personality type and, you're a high performance person and you're very charismatic. I says, but even if nobody listens to your podcasts, you have such a unique opportunity as a podcast host to sit with some phenomenal people, because the reality is people are a lot more susceptible to coming on a podcast and sharing their wisdom, especially when it's in a beautiful studio like this and they're going to get video content and things out of it. So you have a chance to ask those people anything you want. Having spent thousands of pounds over the years on masterminds and things like that, this is the ultimate life hack. It's like your own private university. It's an opportunity for you to learn, to grow, and also to share that with your audience. And I always say that relationships are the highest form of currency. This is a very unique opportunity for you. Well, take us, for example. met initially through the podcast.
Been following you since 2018.
Yeah, but
Early
it was the
days.
podcast
That was a
got
podcast.
that
Yeah.
sort of relationship to the next level.
Yes.
And then from then, like you said, I've came and stayed with you guys, staying with you guys tonight, off out for some dinner. And this is the same with so many of my podcast guests. I'm off out for lunch in a couple of weeks with Mr. and Mrs. Reebok, Joe Foster and Julie, you know, founders of Reebok, who have been great friends of mine since launching the podcast, and a million and one other examples. But I know that you're really passionate about getting around the right people, but also, and I don't mean any offence by this, but the business community can be quite small in Scotland. So again, when you start getting into this podcasting space, suddenly you're expanding your reach globally.
Yeah.
Your network has gone from local to global.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you said, the key for me is asking the questions that sometimes people. In fact, I want to go back to something you mentioned about the relationships you build on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting. Do you know why? Because you talk about things you generally would never speak to somebody else about, and when you can share that emotion, you connect. You have an emotional connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And if you're genuine and authentic, I cannot do anything but grow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I think like what happened with us. Like we sat down, me, you, and Inas were having a blether, and straight away I'm like, I really like. So remember, I only seen you for a distance.
Mm-hmm.
Then I met you, and I'm like, wow, everything that you've been through, and you're just so positive. And I'm like, that's the epitome of growth mindset. And then you made me open up and get emotional about some stuff, so you're building that emotional connection, and I think that's what's really exciting. I think about the new podcast, because I am going to open people up, because I'm going to want people to talk about the real shit that they've went through, the real stuff, the you know, you heard my story, you know, having to put our car up for sale and selling our watches and our jewellery to keep the business running. I want to know that stuff, because I know what it was like for me, but I want other business owners to know what it's like for other people, who they can relate to, you know, rather than looking at somebody, like, go back to the barrel of shit and smelling the roses. When you fall in a barrel of shit, you only can come out smelling the roses if you can stay positive and focused and say, this is an opportunity to learn or grow. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the perception of smelling the roses, because everybody falls in shit. Everybody goes through it. Every business owner. And it's really about saying, okay, you fell in the shit. Go and talk about how you get out it. Go and tell us, what did you do different? What was going through your mind? What was really going through your mind? Nobody you want people to know what was really going through your mind, like running away and patting it on, you know, that way.
Yeah.
And I want it to be about that, because then that allows me, as you said, to really expand my knowledge. You know, I'm a huge podcaster, listener, and audiobook. So this is almost like me taking that to a new level.
Yeah.
You know, a personal brand, you know, a new level, just really
I've been nagging it,
getting it out there, really getting that out there, you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's almost came full circle as well. But I just think that it's, you said the words there that I've continually said on 2.0. It's to learn, to grow, and to share. People want that fly on the wall insight. They want to hear. You said, like, for example, when we met at the cafe before we started recording, that conversation was pretty much identical to the one we had on camera.
Yep.
Whereas, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to call anyone out here, but you know, having been in this industry for quite a while now, you quite often see two personalities, the on-screen camera and the off-screen camera. And actually, some of the most motivational, influential people out there that I've seen on some pretty big stages, behind the scene, they're really socially awkward.
Really?
Yeah, they sort of shrink into a meek and mild version of themselves. Whereas you're very much what you see is what you get. And you're genuinely interested in people. But
absolutely.
As someone who's been around the block a little bit with podcasts, I would also say, so like your story, for example, it's really inspiring. It's all about how you went from absolutely nothing. You were in a multi-six-figure salary, working in a corporate role. You gave it all up. You invested every penny you had and then some to start a business from scratch.
Nearly went bankrupt.
It nearly didn't take off. You know, it's that classic thing, if you've ever seen the
3 years of hell.
3 years of hell. And is that thing, if you've seen that, I don't know if you refer to it as a meme or whatever, where the guy's got the pickaxe and he's picking for gold, and
That's right.
eventually goes to give up. But unbeknownst to him, if he'd just went another few yards, he was almost there. But what people also want, James, because we're not short of the rags to riches stories,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Everyone's got one. And yes, there's a lot of inspiration can be drawn from them. But people want to hear the real challenges as people are going through them as well, because it's not like it's all sunshine and unicorns. Like, you're running a multi-seven-figure business now. You're a really successful guy, but I'm damn sure just because you approach them with a positive mindset that you experience challenges
Every day.
weekly, if not daily, if not
Daily.
hourly. You know, that is
Daily.
the nature of business. And
Absolutely.
people don't want to just see the facade. They want
People
the
no
grit.
paying you. I mean, we're sitting, I think, unpaid debt right now, over 100 grand, if not more. In fact, I think it's more than that. Oh no, that's just, I look at that now. That a few years ago would make me go blue. Now it's just business. You know, it's kind of, you learn and you grow and you develop and you say, okay, well, we need to start planning that this is what's going to happen. And it's tough. Business is really tough.
And I know that you have got so much inspiration from being around other high energy people, and that's what you're going to give to your audience when you're bringing those conversations to the podcast and you're sat with those people. That is the gift that you're now giving back. You're sharing that energy, but whilst you're doing it, you're filling up your own cup.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. I really am. I thought, why have I waited so long? You know, why have I waited? But I think because the business was growing so fast and you didn't have the right people in place, I was still really, you know, the whole saying, on the business, I was still very much in the business, probably up until summer last year, August time, and I started to think, you know what, I still need a few really core people. I need to get, you know, let a few people go who are not capable, maybe not the right word, but not suitable for the next level of growth for the business. But now I have those people. I have those people in the business who I know can literally trust with my life. I mean, that's unique, that I can literally trust with my life. Other than Inas, by the way, we've got some incredibly core people in the business now, and it's allowed me to think, right, okay, what's next for James?
But you also have to be fluid. And you were just saying as we were walking in there, because last time we had a proper catch up was over a month ago, and we were talking about this, how the process had been for you to remove yourself from the business, which is the only way to scale. And you were saying, look, things are going absolutely mental. This is just this morning. We've got all these new contracts. Things are fantastic. But it's meant that I've had to get back in the trenches and deliver a bit of training.
Absolutely.
And it's great. And I love the fact that despite the fact that the business has got to the level that it has, you're not scared to roll your sleeves up, and you will still find yourselves in situations where things that happen, whether they be good or bad, that sometimes require you to be reactive as well. And that's the reality of business.
Absolutely. Listen, receiving a customer, a client who's one of your big customer clients say, I need you to come and do, and you're looking at all your coaches and you're looking at all your trainers and you're going, I don't have anybody. Then you've got to put your big boy pants on and say, all right, I'll come and do it, no worries. You know, so it means my schedule, which was pretty, I'm not going to say open, but allowed me a bit of quite a lot of flexibility in the business, is no longer as flexible over the next 2 or 3 months. But that's okay. That's okay, because what it then does is go, right, okay, we know where our capacity is now. Identify, bring on somebody new, get them trained up, and then away you go again.
So what other things are you going to be covering in the podcast? Because I know in your book, one of my favourite quotes is from the late Jim Rohn, and it's, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. As we've just said, there's always going to be challenges in all aspects of life for everyone, especially entrepreneurs and business people that are going to be listening to this podcast. And one of the things that you refer to in the book is like your morning routine and things that set you up for success. Now, I love asking people about their non-negotiables, and it's different for everyone, and everyone's got a different definition of success. But what you do find over time is there are certain common denominators, that certain threads that seem to run through a lot of high performance
Mhm.
people. Will you be bringing in, is it just business people and entrepreneurs? Will you be talking about mindset? Will you be talking about the morning routines? Will you be talking about the mental
Everything.
health? What are you going to, we're going to, in the scandal, the juice, the goss.
Everything in between. I'm going to be bringing business owners, startups, really highly successful business owners, multi-million pound
Bankruptees.
entrepreneurs, I mean, I want it. I want it. So this is the reason. What I want it to be able to do is I want people to learn and grow from it, right? I want people to be able to listen to me or listen to the podcast and go, I'm feeling like that, because that's what I do. When I'm listening to a podcast or a really, really good book and I hear something, I think, wow, I go and implement it. I mean, me and Nina, obviously, our morning routines were huge into our audio books. And we were listening to one, I can't remember the name, it was about money. And it's about putting all your different pots of money.
Oh, Millionaire Mindset.
Right? So
T.R. Becker.
having all the different pots of money. And we implemented that in our business, and it was game changing. Even some things I hear, I think it was the Australian, South African, or no, was it a New Zealand rugby coach? I was reading his book, and there was a bit in there about leadership. And I actually put that into one of my training programs. That's what I want other people to experience, what I experience. Because see, when I'm listening to a really good podcast or audiobook and I hear something like, wow, it's like the penny drops.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I want that. I want people to know it's all right not to know. It's all right to get it wrong. It's okay. But success or excuses, because all success is to me is when your outcomes and your expectations align. That's success. So that's why it's so different to everybody. Happiness, money, whatever it is. If your outcomes and expectations align, then you feel successful. And that's really what it's about. It's either lower your expectations slightly till you're in a position to grow and develop a little bit more, and then raise your expectations, or vice versa. And I think that's really the absolute key. I have a saying, before you can have, you must first become. Right? So before you can have something, you need to become it in your head. And that's what the podcast is all about. I want them to start visualising and picturing, that could be me if I done this, or if I took that advice. That's the magic, when they can think and start saying, if I can become that person if only I change the way that I think. So going back to I can be a victim, or what's the opposite of victim? Victor. So a victim or a victor. And that's a mindset. I mean, more than anybody else. That is a pure mindset.
Yeah.
And that was why probably Ellie, obviously knowing your news story. Oh God, your news story. your story has evolved over the last 12 months.
By the way, today is my anniversary. I've realised, I just sent my friend Tony a message. 12 months today, I got the phone call.
Oh my God.
Smashed my life apart.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, see that, the story. People, by the way, if you've not listened to it, you need to listen to the very first podcast you talk about it on on a mission too. It is mind blowing, and it epitomises for me learning from the people that you interviewed. So we talked about this. If you're submersing yourself, right, with people who have been there, done it, bought a t-shirt, failed, grew, and you're submersing, you cannot help but take all that information, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And then it's about, well, I know this shit. So, I mean, you told me you used to stand on stage, didn't you? Yeah. And you would talk on stage about, if you lost it all, and that's real mindset.
You can strip me of my assets. You said, so it's so funny, I said, be careful what you manifest, because I said this, because you pretty much said it verbatim. So you could strip me of my assets, my wealth, my businesses, but what you can't strip me of is my mindset, my resilience, and everything else. And no matter what, I know I'm capable of rebuilding.
Absolutely.
Well, what a unique opportunity to be able to implement that. This is the power of relationships. This is the power of energy. This is the power of frequency, the power of intention. It's everything I absolutely embody. And you're right, the university of life, I could not have survived had it not been for my podcast.
Absolutely.
The people I've met, the gold nuggets that have kept me going, and also the gratitude as well at knowing how lucky we are just to wake up every single day, to have roofs over our head,
Yep.
to have 3 square meals a day, even for people living in hostels or really extreme situations, which was almost my reality, by
Yeah.
the way. So I don't say that lightly. When you look at what's going on in multiple countries across the world at the moment, and children being orphaned or maimed or killed, or on this day 12 months ago, prior to meeting up with my friend and getting the phone call, I actually interviewed a lady who'd been sex trafficked. She'd been kidnapped, not once, but twice. An organ harvesting group of sex traffickers had literally kidnapped her and kept her in solitary confinement. And you can just imagine some of the atrocities that then occurred. So there's been so many times over the last 12 months I've referred back to that podcast and that story, and it really has helped to humble me, really.
Yeah. But your story could have broke most people if it hadn't been for the fact that you've probably surrounded yourself with the positivity and the lessons that you've taken for those podcasts and for those people. And that, to me, is what epitomises growth mindset. If you're taking in information and you're learning and you're adjusting and you're adapting, then that's life. Surely that's success. Like, surely. And I think that's really what it's all about, is I want to hear everybody. I want to hear, no matter, I'm going to have different businesses for all over the UK, Scotland, entrepreneurs, startups, everything in between. And I want people to hear it for every level.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy for people to say, well, it's okay for you because that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
It's all right for James because he was oil and gas, they made all this money. But what about before that? And before that? And when I first came out of, the Young Offenders Institute, and I'm like, oh my God, I've lost my job. What am I going to do now? So everybody's got a story.
Everyone's got a story. And one of my podcast guests, a guy called Zuby, he said something which really resonated. I was asking him, he's friends with Andrew Tate, and I said, what do you think of Andrew? And he'd said he agrees with a lot of what he says. There's a lot of what he says he doesn't. And he said it's a case of taking the meat without the bones. And that's going to be the same for your listeners.
Absolutely.
And my listeners. You'll listen to some person that you really resonate with them, or you will resonate with certain aspects of their story or their beliefs, but not necessarily all of them. And that's okay. Even if you just take one golden nugget from every episode or every other couple of episodes, it can completely change the trajectory of your life. And as you said there, everyone's definition of success is different. So you don't want to be a carbon copy of James or Ellie or any of the other guests that you're going to interview. But you might think, you know what, I really like James's morning routine. I really like Ellie's approach towards whatever. And I think that's what the beauty of bringing in such a diverse group of people and entrepreneurs. And as you said, they're not just entrepreneurs, mindset specialists, athletes. There's so many common denominators. I've interviewed some of the SAS boys, and wow, I'm like, I tell you what, so much of what they say really resonates in terms of chunking things down and focusing on what's on your control. And
Absolutely.
it's amazing you mentioned about the New Zealand rugby coach. I'm always quoting Dave Brailsford and the 1% rule and the small incremental changes.
Absolutely.
So you're going to be bringing in a lot of incredible people. I think it's very exciting, James.
Absolutely. Very exciting. And as I said, it's just people learning a little bit of information, something that they can take away. And, having that, feeling motivated, right? Whether you're driving in a car, whether it's something you do in the morning, whether it's your morning routine, whatever it is, just having a bit of motivation, right? Because most of the people are going to, in fact, everybody that I've got lined up, I've got 20 odd guests lined up, so I'm going to be really, really busy the next few months. I've got about 20, I think I've got about 40 guests, but I've got 20 actually booked in and lined up for the initial podcast. And they are from every walk of life, like every walk of life. So they're all going to have different stories, but I'll guarantee you they'll all have very similar themes. And it's the story that they've told themselves, they've had to untell themselves to enable them to move forward, the big challenges they've had in life, similar to my own challenge. And I think that is what's really exciting. I absolutely love hearing people's stories. Like, I can just sit in awe listening to some people, and I want it to be like that. I just want it to be like that, and a bit of fun, and there'll be a bit of swearing in it. Because guess what, I'm a Glasgow boy, so what do you expect? But yeah, that's probably the kind of premise of it, and really excited to get it kicked off.
Can I just say, so my 12-year-old came in the other day, and Kira, my podcast manager, was around, and we were just at my kitchen table, and we were just finishing editing a clip, and my daughter Sienna came in, and I said, "Oh, come and have a look at the clip," and she just went, "Oh." I said, "Oh, do you not like the editing?" It was pretty sharp, I thought. And she was like, "Yeah, no, the editing's great." I was like, "It's me, isn't it?" And she went, I was like, "What is it?" And she said, "Well, it's just when you laugh." She just went, I don't think you should really laugh on camera. It doesn't suit you. And you swear far too much as well." I thought, oh God, being reprimanded by my 12-year-old. I thought, well, if I don't laugh and I don't swear, I don't know where I really go from there.
Ellie,
What's your favourite things?
It happens to me all the time. I see, I model. See, when I'm sitting with people, even I've been in quite a lot of other people's podcasts, so I model.
I'll be on my best behaviour for you, by the way, today.
I model, but I'm really on my best behaviour. I don't think I've swore yet.
We haven't. We're setting the wrong message here.
I was on a podcast yesterday with the company that owned this studio, and I was on Mark's podcast, and oh my God, we were swearing, and I was just like, oh, people hear me. But you know what? That's who I am.
Yeah.
I want it to be real. It has to be raw, and Scottish people swear.
Yes, we do.
Right? We swear. I mean, this is true, right? I'll go into huge corporate companies to run events, leadership events or business events, and I'll swear. I won't curse, but I'll swear, like in appropriate times, right? When you know that there's no other word but or shit or, I mean, I've seen me actually dancing. I've seen me running events, and I'm somebody say, I've been saying something like, "I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want," and I'll go,
"We should do a song about that."
And I've went into this Spice Girls, and you've seen.
I tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
And I've seen me get into this, and I'm like, why? Or because a lot of what we do is storytelling, right? Because people remember. Tell me a story, and I will remember. And that's why our leadership is so much, in my opinion, the best in the planet, because we're telling stories that people can relate to, understand, and take information from them or put themselves in the story. Anyway, and I'll start telling a story, right? And it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen a really good comedian. They start off with a story, they go way somewhere completely different, but at the end they come back to the story. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it. I'll start telling a story and then it'll go way off track, and 10 minutes later I'll go, what was I telling that story for again? And you'll have people be absolutely howling, laughing. And so, listen, as you said, this is what you get all the time with me. It's me exactly like this. Sometimes I'll get into abroad, like I was on Billy Farrell's podcast, and me and Billy broad Glasgow accents. So when I'm talking to Billy, all right, know what I mean? Why?
So I live in England. I've lived in England for longer than I lived in Scotland, and both my parents are English, so I was never brought up with a particularly broad accent. Brought up in Lithgow, which is not... Lithgow, yeah. Which is quite a sort of affluent area, really.
It's beautiful.
It's one of those places that you go back and visit now, it's not like, oh my God, this is beautiful. As a kid, it was so boring. But yeah, what I was going to say is, I will sit and talk to you. I've never been brought up in Glasgow, ever. But then I just started speaking on Ouija. I'm like, I know. I never ever spoke like that.
We
when
talked
I lived
that
in
the night
Scotland.
we were sitting, we were both off the alcohol, me and Ellie, but we were having a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And Ellie says to me, oh my God, James, I'm speaking Glaswegian. Why? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Remember that?
Yeah.
The Glasgow accent came right out.
I think we do, because you mirror people's body language.
Absolutely.
You mirror, honestly, like I speak to someone Irish for more than 10 minutes. And it's quite bad, really. But James, really exciting times ahead for the podcast. Are you able to give us any sneak insights into any of your forthcoming guests?
I can. So my very first guest, other than yourself, will be a business owner called Mike Savage, who is the CEO of Channel Finance Group. So they do mortgages, asset finance, insurances, all that thing. And I met Mikey. So this is about the your net worth, your people, your network is your net worth. So I met Mikey through my accountant. My previous accountant said, "Oh, James, you need to meet this guy." So I met Michael about 6 years ago, maybe 7, right at the early start of the journey. And we met at the Doubletree Hilton in Bellshill. We had a coffee and we were blathering away and we got on really, really well. And he's like, "Oh man," he's like just with my energy, he's like, "I need to come in one of your courses because if this is what you're like, just chatting, I think I'd love one of your training courses." So he came on one of my training courses and he's like, wow, what have I just experienced? It was a one day, it was called Self-Leadership Development, the very first program I ever built. And he was like, wow, he says, "This has completely changed my life." And we just connected. And he's probably my best mate.
Oh.
Right? So he's now my best mate. He's a guy that I trust with my life. And it's funny how you like that network in business and you meet people. And I'm going to go back to, I'm going to give another example, but why, when somebody's authentic, you can't help but connect, I think. You can't help but connect. And that's what I want this to be about, is about that authenticity. So we've got Mikey first. Guest number 3 will be a guy called Stuart Geddes. Again, network. So early years. Stuart, I met Stuart through BNI. I did when I first started out my journey, business journey, and I met Stuart and I was his business coach for I probably suppose still am, but I don't do coaching any longer. I actually bloody hate coaching because I'm a very black and white kind of guy. You either do it or you don't. If you don't, I don't want to coach you. So yeah, so if you're going to sit with me and you're going to pay me loads of money to coach you and support you in your journey, and we agree on actions that you're going to take, and you come back to me 2 weeks later and you've not taken the actions.
You get rid of people. I love that about you. You're like, take your money back. You're not cutting it.
Done. So I wasn't a great coach. But I've got fantastic world-class coaches. So he's now with one of my other coaches. But Stuart had a business, sold his business for 7 figures, started up another business. And so the journey that he's going through, and I've been coaching him through the other business and how he's grown and developed it. He's got an office in London now, just in Glasgow. So that again, really down to earth, working class mindset. But man, if you think I'm energetic, Stuart is on another level. He is on another level when it comes to energy. I mean, you can imagine, right? My energy, I bounce out of bed in the morning.
You literally do as well. Having stayed over at your house first thing in the morning before you've even had your cup of coffee, I'm like, yes, he's like this every morning. She's like, aye.
I bounce out of bed. I bounce out of bed in the mornings. It's just, you get a choice every morning, don't you? I can go up and I'm really tired, I know, I can't be bothered today, and go to the gym again and I'm a wee bit sore today because, no. I mean, I talked about this in a podcast, right, just the other day there, and we're talking about negativity. And I says, I don't live in a world of negativity. And they said, some people will not understand that, James. And I go, well, I don't live in a negative world. I says, as a human, I'm already saturated with negativity, with the news and social media. I says, I just don't allow it into my mind. I says, I am so aware that, I'm not saying I don't get annoyed, I don't get angry, I don't get upset, but I don't allow negativity to grow. I just don't. So, and because I don't see it. I don't actually, like, negativity doesn't come back. That whole energy flow.
Yeah, what you focus on, you attract.
So my what's the right word? I'm resonating on a level that I don't see it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if what you would like. I don't know what
quantum
to call
physics.
It. I don't see it. Right. I mean, I remember when I first started in business, as you can imagine, I used to be really, really social media, constant videos, self-branding to build the business. And then obviously took a huge step away because I wanted to be about the business and stopped doing a lot of that stuff. And obviously now I'm getting back. And I got a lot of, I wouldn't say hate, but you know what it's like when you first started. Who does he think is? He's from wishy. I went to school with him and if I had allowed that to dictate, I probably wouldn't be sitting having this conversation. But I'm like, fuck you. Mm-hmm. I'll show you who I am. This is the difference between me and you.
I love that.
I don't bring people down. I push people up. Like why?
Yeah.
I don't get it. So, that was it.
I am absolutely buzzing for your podcast, The Incredible Guests, but more just because the world gets to hear more James Fleming, and ultimately that's what it's all about. Because people are going to really gravitate towards you. All of this stuff worked, James. You're living proof of it. You're absolutely living proof of it. You epitomise. You walk the walk.
I do try.
No, you genuinely do. And I don't say that lightly. I'm very selective who I spend my time with these days. And I find you really inspiring. And it would have been an absolute travesty if we'd have not got this podcast off the ground.
If you talk, you're like, oh, I think this is a great idea. I'm like, do you know what? That is a really good idea.
It is.
No, never mind doing the podcast, but even the interview.
Yeah.
I booked this last minute. I'm like, Ellie's coming up. And you're like, why don't I just interview? And I'm like, okay, podcast schedule. You got a space? Yep. Done.
Oh, you know what? It's so much fun. I'll need to come back. I'll co-host some with you.
Absolutely.
I'll come and co-host.
Absolutely. You know, honestly, Ellie, it's. I actually find that it's a privilege for me. Well, I want to talk about network. I mean, we talked about. I don't have a big network, right? I have a loyal network of people that I trust. I don't have this huge, because I don't give trust away really easy. Right, I'm always quite careful, but when you have a network of people who you trust, I think that's gold dust. I really do, and like there's a lot of people you are acquaintances, but there's a lot of people you would consider friends or almost friends, like Billy Farrell. Right, Billy Farrell's a mutual friend that both me and you. I mean, I still am. I'm in awe of a lot of things at how Billy handles himself and how he, you know. And I'm like, I mean, that guy has been through some shit, and he just keeps bouncing back, you know. And so Billy's coming on the podcast. I've got so many people coming on. I'm really excited about it. Honestly, I'm really excited because I just want that realness. You know, that way. I just want it to be completely bullshit free.
James, it's been an honour and a privilege. It's been fantastic to be part of your very first episode. I can't wait to watch this baby grow. This is going to be a very exciting journey for you and for the listeners as well. I'm so glad you're doing it, and I just wish you every success.
Ellie, honestly, thank you so much. You talked to me into it, even though I was like, oh, do I really want to put my face in front of the camera again? I'm really excited, but I'm glad that you pushed that wee bit, and I thought, you know, because I told you I promise I'll do it when you were up just before Christmas. No, I promise I will in the new year, and I was like, oh, first week in January, I'll put it off, and I thought, no, if I don't actually do something right now, I literally phoned Mark up, who owns the podcast studio, and I says, right, have you got this available every single week for the next 2 months? Book it. So they're booked. I then went on and I made a list of all my network, like everybody in business in my network, and I basically just messaged every single one of them. You know, I've got people coming in from Aberdeen, I've got, you know, males, females. It's not going to be a man thing. This is like total mix, man. I mean, this is every which way but loose, you know. And I'm excited. And let's get it on.
Let's get it on.
Ellie, listen, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for being part of my journey, and lots of things to happen in the future. Let's hope.
The best is yet to come.
You're right.
I hope you've enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.